Well, here's a familiar Aussie face to these shores, Tom Moody, batsman, bowler, raconteur, coach, and part of a fantastic Australian team. Will this Australia team be seen to be fantastic? Time will tell, I guess. Written off, probably not followed the blueprint of preparation for an Ashes series. It's all gone terribly wrong, but sport doesn't work like that, does it?
No, it doesn't. I think obviously Australia's had a challenging time leading into the first test, but I think more importantly from Australia's perspective, I think the past 10 days or so there's been some stability installed in the Australian dressing room, and I think that's been the most important thing. Clearly there were some issues in the dressing room, and with regards to players' performances and the team's performances prior to that, and Cricket Australia are unhappy with the direction the team was going and made a pretty ruthless decision to make that change. And I think given that's all happened, it's all looking a lot more positive for Australian cricket.
Well, in team sports in general, when there's a change, there's always, at least initially, a positive response. Now, you know Darren Lehmann, you've played with him, haven't you? And it's a sort of image of him being very sort of grizzled, old school Aussie grit, and there's nothing wrong in that, is there? But he's also merged the modern day game as well. He's a very successful coach, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I think he's got a really nice balance, Darren, in the sense that he recognises you've got to have fun, whatever you're doing, regardless of how professional, how serious it may well be. You've got to have fun doing it, because generally, if you're having fun, you're going to perform at your very best. And Australia hasn't been doing that, and certain individuals within that team haven't been doing that. So that's the one side of Darren Lehmann. That's that fun, creating that environment where people are having fun. But then there's the very serious side where he doesn't tolerate fools, and he doesn't tolerate any ill discipline. So people know exactly where they stand with him. Yes, have a good time, but you need to toe a firm line with the team. And he's very much about the team and creating that environment within the team. And I think that was lost with the Australian cricket team, and I think he's recaptured that, and he is recapturing that very quickly.
Now, for most of the time that you were involved in the Australian cricket team, you were beating everybody. You were hot favourites, and you were certainly enjoying playing the English. But I think I'm right in saying, in the early days of Tom Moody's Test career, you were part of an Australian team that came over here under Anand Border, and you weren't fancied. You were the underdogs, and here we are again, a few years on. What's it like being written off as an Aussie? I would have thought if I was English, I wouldn't want to hear that.
Yeah, it's stirring the hornet's nest, really. Look, I think the Australian team recognise this is a good England side, and there's some very good players in that side. But one thing that any sportsman has, or any person for that matter, is pride. And once that gets shaken, where that you're no good or you're written off, that can quite often create an environment where a team becomes even more galvanised than they were before. And I think the Australian team will use that, if anything, as fuel against being a negative influence to the team. I think they'll use that as an opportunity to prove people wrong.
Why do you think there's a gulf between that great team that you played in and today? Now, obviously, you can't replace overnight the likes of Warren McGrath, the Wars, Hayden, Gilchrist, obviously. But they must have seen it coming. There's a big gulf, isn't there? Yeah,
look, I think I think in any business or sport, it can be cyclical, where you have your highs and lows. And I think Australia had remarkable period of time where they were on top of the game. It's about 15 years they dominated world cricket, which was very, very unique in any sport. Possibly the transition wasn't as handled as well as it should have been handled. And I think the other issue is that what was happening with a team that was relatively settled for a long period of time, behind that team was a very good second string of players that weren't getting opportunities, and both of those groups of players retired at the same time, and it left a gulf in first class cricket, and then in turn left a gulf internationally. So there wasn't a lot of movement domestically with players, and the stability was in state cricket, where there wasn't a lot of turnover of players at that level, as the same with the national side. And I think that there was a big drop off a lot of experienced players at the same time, and we're paying the price for that now.
Now we know all about the England team. Obviously, proven Test batsmen in the likes of Cook and Trott, guys who can take a game away from you in the likes of Peterson, Swan, who's a very dangerous bowler, particularly against the left-handers, and people like Anderson, who's over 300 Test wickets. So they're very, very proven. We don't know so much about the Australians. We know that Michael Clarke is a serious run getter, and we know that someone like Brad Haddin, he'll be a good wicket to get.
Yeah.
But we hear that, particularly in English conditions, the Australian bowling attack could be extremely potent indeed.
Yeah, look, it's a good young group. That's one thing the Australians have got in abundance, and that's depth of young fast bowlers coming through. The likes of James Pattinson, for instance, will be one of the first picked for the Ashes. He's 22, 23 years old. He's tall, he's quick, he gets the ball in the right areas, and if the wickets do support the pace bowlers, we will match England's attack. I suppose the one difference will be the Swan factor. Nathan Lyon's a good young bowler, but he hasn't got the runs on the board like Swan has. So that's the one difference, and that's where I see a lot of the wickets that we're going to be playing on are going to be relatively dry and probably support the slower bowlers against the pace bowlers. So yeah, look, I think Australia certainly will compete and will be able to take 20 wickets to win a Test match. It's just whether we can have batsmen that step up and support Michael Clarke in the quest to getting enough runs.
So we remember you in England, obviously playing county cricket and obviously playing for Australia as well. You just missed out on the IPL, which is a bit of a shame, because I've got a feeling you would have been very, very useful. You like to smack the ball, and you could bowl spin, and you could bowl sort of seam without too much pace on it as well. So I don't want to rub salt in the wound, but you would have been perfect, wouldn't you?
I would have enjoyed it. I would have enjoyed playing 2020 cricket. 2020 didn't really come about, until I was long gone. But yeah, look, it would have suited my game. Yeah, there would have been opportunities out there that would have been great to experience. But if I look back on my career, I don't think I would trade the time I had in the game for what potentially are riches in the game today. I had a pretty special career in the sense that it was a balance of that old-fashioned style of playing cricket where you have a beer with your opponent after a day's play, to the back end of my career became more and more professional. So I experienced both sides, which is special.
T20 is great for the game, lots of crowds, lots of money, TV money, etc. But the old aficionados will still say it's about Test cricket. Is T20 affecting Test cricket?
Look, I think in some aspects it is, but I think players are starting to recognise that they need to balance their approach to both those formats of the game. I think the prize still for any player anywhere in the world is to be a successful Test cricketer. It's all well and good being a good 2020 cricketer. I think any cricketer today and in the future will put their hand up and say, number one, I want to be a good Test cricketer. Okay, final thing, prediction, and you can use your heart if you like, not your head, for this summer. Look, I think prior to the change in the Australian setup, I would have thought it was going to be a 3-1 loss for Australia, but I think it's going to be a lot closer now. So I'm going to sit on the fence with 2-2.
You don't get the Ashes for 2-2, do you?
No, you don't, but we'll pick them up in Australia.
Okay, well done. Thank you.
Okay, pleasure.